Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about Plex Media Server. More appropriately, I want to tell you guys about how to set up a Plex Media Server with a Synology NAS. I've done a lot of videos with NAS over the last few years, but ultimately I tend to skip over what is ostensibly quite a not a common hurdle, but definitely something a lot of you might hesitate on in the early days of buying a NAS for Plex Media Server. How exactly do you set one up? You've purchased one of these things, a NAS, in this case, the DS420 Plus. I haven't decided yet if it's going to be in the title or not, but most of the steps today will apply to pretty much any NAS, really. How do you set it up? What do you do with one of these things? And how do you get from the beginning of a bunch of stuff on a table to sitting on your sofa and watching your media, or maybe even looking at Plex Media Server on your mobile phone? Maybe you just want to watch your media on that. So today we want to talk about how to set one up from the ground up. I'm going to set this device up with you guys watching, and I'm going to do the software side on my laptop over there, and then we're going to set up Plex Media Server for this device, and I'm going to do it straight away from scratch. So what do we need in today's video? Well, first and foremost, we need a NAS, don't we? Make sure, if you want to have the best Plex experience, to go for a NAS that's got at least an Intel dual or quad-core processor. Minimum Celeron, ideally higher, but Celeron is a very good entry point into it, and that's because of its handling of multimedia. You have got NASs out there that support Plex and multimedia enjoyment that don't utilize Intel CPUs. Some of them are like the ARM based processors, like your Realtek, your Marvels. Some of those will support Plex, but the performance won't be as smooth as you might like. And although the steps in today's video will apply to them, it should be said that to get the best out of Plex, you need an x86 processor. So you're talking an Intel, maybe some of those top-end AMDs as well. So we've got our NAS. Next thing you're going to need is storage media. You're going to need either hard drives or solid-state drives. You will get better performance from solid-state drives, but they are far more expensive, and of course you get lesser capacities. Prices have really come down in 2020, but prices are still much higher, and the limitations of storage much lower in SSDs than they are in hard drives. Next, you have to wonder about how many hard drives you're going to need, because in this video I'm using WD Reds, and I'm going to be using 4 of them inside this device. We don't need to have lots, but you might have multiple for 2 reasons. One, because you get combined overall capacity. So you have multiple drives creating something called a RAID that I'll talk about later on in the video. Or you have multiple drives so that if a hard drive fails for some reason, because, you know, electronics are just things that may fail, if that happens, you want to make sure your data is intact. And consequently, RAID is a way in which if one of these drives was to break, the other 3 will still maintain your data because of a system called parity and redundancy. And watch my other videos on RAID to understand that. What else do you need? Well, in some cases you will, of course, need a screwdriver, because some hard drives need to be screwed in. But in the case of this NAS, we're not going to need these today, so we can get rid of those. And we can carry on just with the device itself. What else you're going to need? You're going to need a computer. You're going to need some. I've got it over here in the background. You're going to need a PC or a Mac system, ideally between one of those two, to set up a Plex Media Server. You can set up the NAS with just a mobile phone. You can do it very easily with DS Finder and just the app. But to install Plex and set Plex up for the first time, I kind of recommend you have some sort of desktop client device. You can kind of get away with a tablet or an iPad or something, but not really, and I do recommend you use a desktop computer. In the second half of this video, I will be on that screen there. And that's really it. You need a power source, because it's got a power supplier, and you need to be within some sort of distance to your router or switch, or in this case I'm going to be using a little router up there, but you can use like power line adapters perhaps. So for those of you that don't want to keep the NAS in the same room as your main visual device, your smart TV or some sort of HDMI device with an Amazon Fire Stick inside, you can utilize things like power line adapters. We can get 2 of these, one of them in the same room as your router, connected into the router there via a LAN connection, plug it into the wall via the mains, and then at the other end of the house where your big TV is, you have another one of these, wired connection into the TV or via an adapter into the Fire Stick, and from there it will run the internet and network connectivity through the mains line power of your home via one of these. There are alternatives. You can get Wi-Fi repeaters and expanders, but effectively the same logic of what we just described, but creating a wireless access point at the other end of your house. There are lots of things you can do to expand connectivity. You just have to make sure that the NAS is at least network connected in some form or another, and that's what that cable that it arrives with does. So what we need to do is first install our drives. Now, as mentioned, today's steps apply to pretty much any Synology NAS. One area where there may be difference, though, is in how you install the drives. Some NASs involve taking the chassis apart and installing the drives inside. Some of them have click and load trays like these. So you end up with a system where you've got your tray, you put in your drive like that, and then you apply the clips on the side. Now, I don't know if you guys are watching this video at home as people that are considering buying a NAS for Plex and you just want to see how easy or hard it is, or if you're someone that's already bought all these components and are looking for a guide on how to do it. Let's face it, it's probably a good mix of both of you. But what I will say is there is a lot you can do with a network attached storage device. It's more than just a thing you're going to use for multimedia. So when you are setting one of these up, or whether you've bought it yet or not, if you're considering the investment, bear in mind there are loads of applications that run on these devices, from surveillance to large spread backups, other means of multimedia enjoyment. There is just so many different things you can do with a network attached storage device in your home or business environment that, if you are on the fence, do look at the available applications. The reason I bring that up is Plex Media Server has another factor that I've not touched on yet, and that is to do with resources. It's not just about the CPU that you're going to be that's inside this NAS that will factor into which one you should be going for. Choosing the right network attached storage device, put the drive in the wrong way up there because I'm an idiot. Buying the right NAS, if you are going to use it for multi-purpose needs, the memory plays a very, very big part in what this device can do. And Plex Media Server is quite a hungry beast. You're going to need at least 2 gig of memory spare to run Plex Media Server effectively, particularly with bigger 1080p files and H.264 and 265, and there are issues with some HDR content, 10-bit, 8-bit, that sort of thing. But if you're going to run it with surveillance, or if you're going to use it for DLNA, or you're going to use it for some of those first-party applications, or you're going to run a virtual machine, or you're going to do any of those things, then make sure you've got at least 4 gig of memory. You can get away with 2 gig if it's just for Plex and literally nothing else. But if you're going to run other services, maybe upgrade the memory. This device arrived with 2 gig of DDR4 memory, but I will say that it can be upgraded to 6 gig of DDR4 memory with an expansion slot in there. You just pop in a little bit of extra memory, little tiny one inside there, and you will have more memory to run more services. Plus, you might even use that extra memory for Plex. Now, before I get to the stage where I boot this up, I will touch on another thing. It's not just memory that you can use to improve your experience with Plex. At the base of some devices, as you see here, you have these bays. They are called NVMe SSD bays. These allow you to install little, small SSDs to improve additional cache support to the hard drive. So the hard drives will be in a storage array. There'll be a bunch of drives all combined together in whatever RAID volume you choose, and I'll show you on the screen in a bit. But on top of that, you can add these SSDs to vastly improve the performance internally. Now, the way that works is if you were to populate this with SSDs, the speed would be insane, but it's super expensive, like 5-6 times more expensive per drive, and you can't get as bigger sizes. Currently, you can get drives like 16 terabytes from Seagate Ironwolf in their NAS series, whereas in SSDs at a SATA connection like this, you're looking at like 4 TB flat out max. There are larger ones coming, thanks to quad level NAND or QLC SSD NAND coming around with larger capacities, but it's not as good, and it's still going to be super expensive by comparison. The reason SSD caching with those 2 bases is important, because you can get 2 small SSDs, NVMe SSD cache, for many of the devices, not just the DS420, and these can leverage the cost. So these 2 little SSDs at like 120 or 250 gig, just to get like 10% of the overall hard drive storage and match it. What you can do then is that small amount of investment in SSD will work in conjunction with the hard drives, and with read-write caching, allow frequently accessed files and convergent tasks and tasks that are running simultaneously to be buffered by the SSD. And it can be used as a kind of hybrid storage. So you've got hard drives, which are so fast. You've got SSDs that are quite fast. And down here, you can spend a little bit of money on SSDs and try to improve those internal speeds. And those internal speeds work in Plex, they work in surveillance, they work in VMs, they work in day-to-day storage. And all your connected users will see the benefits. So do bear that in mind. And if you're looking for the right NAS, don't just look at the memory, don't just look at the CPU, and don't just look at the bays. See if SSD caching is possible too on the device you're looking at. But next, we need our power and we need network connectivity. Now, the first thing you want to connect is your network cable first. The reason being is you don't want to power up the device before you put your network in. It's not the end of the world, but sometimes it can lead to IP problems on the router and switch side, simply because it thinks it's something that already exists, or it can preset the domain without you wanting it to be the case. So make sure you connect your network cable first before you power the device on. Next, get your PSU. Maybe you've got an external power brick or you've got an internal power brick. In this case, it's external. We connect the NAS end first, and generally I would recommend that you power it off at the wall before you connect a cable. But because it's all the way over there and I don't want to ruin this recording, I've already done it in advance. Connect your external power brick, look for the green light. Then from there, once you've got your LAN cable and your power cable connected, click power on. And now the device is powering on. Now this is going to take around 3 to 5 minutes max. Now this next stage, part 2 or 3, you can do on a mobile phone if you so choose. You don't have to, but seeing as you've got to set the Plex bit up on a desktop anyway, you might as well stay with a desktop system. Now, I recommend a few tools downloading straight off the bat. Firstly, I strongly recommend that you download a tool called Synology Assistant. It will already be on the laptop. We move over to that screen, but Synology Assistant will allow you to find the NAS on your local area network. And what that means in real terms is make sure that this is also connected to the same internet as this laptop or your PC system. Now, I know I did big bunny ears on the word internet there. It isn't 1999. I'm not Will Smith. What I'm saying is, by having that device on the same internet connection, beep beep for you, you're actually on the same network. And that's important. Networks are kind of like the houses on a street. The network is one road. Every device, your TV, your phone, your laptop, your whatever that is on the internet that you're all using together are houses on that street. The network is the street. Make sure these are all on the same street. The reason Synology Assistant is important because once they're on the same street/network, the result is that running Synology Assistant will then scan your local area network from the laptop or PC and find the NAS. And then you can interact with the NAS and set it up for the first time. So it doesn't matter if you're using a wireless device like I am today, as long as that wireless device that you're using to get internet is from the same router and network as what you've connected this into, you'll be absolutely fine. So download that tool. The second thing to download that you will need later on is to go to the Plex Media Server website and go to the download section. And from there, you'll be able to download a version of Plex Media Server for Synology NAS. The reason you should download it from there is because even though the Synology NAS App Center will have Plex on it, that Plex app is all too often a few versions out of date. Plex is updated quite regularly in terms of all the services they add, all the web shows, all the add-ons, and for security fixes. So when they do that, they update the app on the Plex website considerably more often than they do on the NAS. So it's recommended that you download the latest version early doors, and then it's available for when we install Plex. But for now, let's make our way to the screen because the device has beeped, which means it's ready to be found on the network. Let's make the switch over to the computer. Right, so now we move over to the desktop system. As you can see, if you use the Synology Assistant tool, it will find the NAS on your local area network. Now, if you want to get the tool for yourself, head over to the Synology website, go to the downloads area, drop down and find the NAS that you are utilizing. You can select pretty much any NAS, to be honest, for this tool. Let's go for just that one there. And as you'll see, if you go to Desktop Utilities, you will find the Synology Assistant tool for a myriad of different platforms there. There's loads of other apps. I recommend you check them out. But for today's video, we just want to look at Plex. Now, also, as mentioned earlier on, there's getting the Plex Media Server application too. So if you head over to the Plex website and then go to /Media Server Downloads, select the drop down for Synology, and as you'll see, you can choose the package there where it will ask you to select the kind of CPU you've got. And if you're going for a 64-bit one, it would be a 64-bit Intel-based processor there. And this should all be pretty self-evident from your CPU and using the Synology spec pages. Any questions, you can always fire me a message directly and I'll tell you. Now, have that downloaded on your PC locally. We'll come back to that later on. Now, if you use that tool that we've just described here, let's bring it open again, and then when you search your local area network, the NAS will appear here on this listing. The first time you boot it up for the first time, it'll ask you to sign the user end agreement with Synology, which you can do there and click OK, and then it will open up the app. Now, as you can see, it's opening it up in my browser here. But I'd already pre-opened it here on incognito window. I don't expect you to do that. The reason I'm doing it on incognito window for my PC is for setting up Plex. I've set up Plex on this NAS a bunch of times, and I want to show you guys what it's like to use it for the very first time, rather than the pre-used version I've got in my copy of Chrome. But moving forward, this is the screen you will see. The next thing you need to do is click Setup. From here, it will say that it's going to install Diskstation Manager for your NAS. This is the operating system from Synology, and if you just click Install Now, it will install that software. Remember, this isn't installing Plex. This is installing the operating system that won't cost you anything extra. It's included in the cost of your NAS right here. So just click Install Now. It will say that it's going to format all of those disks, say that you'll let it happen, but bear in mind it will delete the data on those disks. Click OK, and now it's going to install DSM on the NAS. This can take anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes depending on the strength of your internet connection. So if you will, what we'll do is we'll fast forward to the completion of the installation of DSM. Once DSM has finished being installed, this is the screen that you'll see. You need to create a name for your NAS server. For me, I'm just going to call this one DS420, but obviously you can give it whichever name you want. Then you need to create an admin and password, and this is going to be the main login for the device. Don't worry, you can create sub-accounts later. And again, you are dealing with the NAS side of things. This is nothing to do with Plex yet. So now you're setting up the NAS for the first time, and here is where you can set up internet access. Once again, you don't need to do this for Plex Media Server, as Plex has its own means of accessing the NAS remotely. For here, this is where you'll need to set up remote access to the NAS and the NAS backend utilizing DSM. For now, I'm going to skip it, but if you want to access the NAS remotely, access these details, and this will give you internet access to the NAS. I'm going to skip this step and proceed to the desktop of DSM. Now from here is where we're going to be setting up the device for storage. This is where we're going to place all of our multimedia and where we're going to let Plex browse our device. So first thing you need to do when setting up your NAS for the first time is head up here to the top and go to the Storage Manager. You need to create two things: a storage pool, which is an area which combines all the available hard drives or selected hard drives into one giant storage area, and then a volume where you can create containers of storage within that vast sandbox of data storage you've created where your files can live. So the first thing you need to do is go to the storage pool. Click Create and then choose which kind of storage pool you want. This is where RAID will take place. Of all the different kinds of RAID on this 4-bay, there are several options open. We're going to go for the higher flexibility option, as this allows us to improve our storage by adding new and larger drives later on. Clicking Next, we need to give the pool a name. I'm going to call this one simply DS420 as the pool, but you can name it whatever you like. From here, you need to select your RAID. Now, based on the different NAS device you use, the RAID options will change, but let's go through them quite quickly. Synology Hybrid RAID is their own proprietary RAID system. It allows you to mix and match drives, and on this entire list it's the only one that allows you to have different sized drives. You shouldn't do that on day one, but years down the line you may want to introduce bigger drives as your library grows, and these two may be the best option for you. Both of these respectively allow you to have one drive of disk failure and 2 disks of drive failure. Just bear in mind that in the case of the 2 disk failure, you will have a slight performance dip as the system has to calculate all of that parity across multiple disks. Next you have RAID 1. This is when you have 2 disks paired together that allow you to have exactly the same data on both disks, with both of them being read and written to at exactly the same time. It's a great option and does give great performance of read and write, as well as a 1 disk failure safety net, but it does mean 50% of your storage is gone. RAID 5 is a lot like SHR, with RAID 5 giving you 1 disk of drive failure, with the data being written across multiple disks, and 1 little bit of parity or a blueprint moves onto each disk. It's a great storage area, and a lot of people use it. You just can't use the flexible drives of SHR. RAID 6 is comparable to SHR2, so 2 disks of RAID failure without the safety net, and RAID 10 effectively halves all of your storage by pairing drives together in a group massing of RAID 1s. Then there's Basic, JBOD, these together are just loose disks, and RAID 0 combines the total storage drives for 1 giant storage area. But bear in mind you have no safety net, and if 1 drive dies, that's the end of your data. So for now, I'm going to select SHR. From here, select the drives that you're going to use in this array, and you don't have to use all the drives. You can use some if you choose, or if you've only got 1 disk inside, it will show 1 disk. I'm going to select them all. It's then going to let me know that these disks will be formatted during the build, and it will tell me how much data there'll be at the end, as well as the number of drive safety net available. Then I click Apply. This will create our storage pool with which we're going to put on our storage volume. Now, some storage pools take longer than others. A RAID 5 or SHR involving multiple disks can take somewhere between 6 to 12 to 24 hours depending on the size of the disks. Click OK, and from here we need to create our volume. Next, go up here and create your volume, your container of storage that lives on the storage pool. You can create multiple volumes if you choose, so you can use some for surveillance, some for backup, some for Plex, and others. Or you can just create 1 giant storage pool for everything. For now, select the existing storage pool you've created, then click Next. It will be available there as the 1 pool you've created. If you've created multiple, they'll all appear there. And moving forward, select your file system. The file system is more of a technical detail that some of you may not wish to engage in. It's ultimately how blocks of data are on the system and how they're read and written to and how interacted with they are on other systems. Synology supports BTRFS, which has lots of background protection features and a shared snapshot recreation, as well as data integrity checks that will check the beginning and end of most data transmission. Although it's worth mentioning that it is a newer file system than ext4, and the performance is a fraction less in terms of read and write. I'm going to go for BTRFS because I'm going to use this NAS for other things in future videos, but you may wish to consider ext4. Then we click Next. From here we need to describe it if we so choose, otherwise it will be described as storage pool 1. Next we look at the size. Now we can either use the total available capacity or lower that capacity so we can create multiple volumes. If you want to make sure that your multimedia is separate from your backups or your surveillance is separate from your movies, minimize this amount of capacity so you can create different volumes for different tasks. I'm going to go for the full size though. Click Next, and you can see that we're starting to create our volume. Click Apply, and it will now create our volume there in the background. This shouldn't take too long. Now, while it does this, it's worth highlighting a few things. Volume creation is relatively quick. It will happen based on the power of your NAS. It can take anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes. While this is going on, however, your storage pool isn't complete, and this is what can take 6 to 12 to 18 to 24 hours based on the drives. Consequently, read and write performance will suffer during this period, as the system is running quite intensive background operations with the disks being accessed in real time. So, even though we're going to proceed with the rest of these steps moving forward, I will highlight that if the RAID creation is not finished, then it will affect performance for you. So it is highly recommended that you wait until the storage pool is completed, which will be shown here as normal and completed, as well as a notification up here that will tell you when the RAID is complete. And as the volume is created, this will also create multiple subfolders here in the file manager that will arrive. As you can see, we need to create a shared folder. Now, the shared folder, once again, is not the end of the world, but a shared folder allows you to create a folder that is visible on other systems. So if you want to transfer files from your PC, your Mac, your whatever system, having a shared folder is very useful. For this, we're going to call this shared folder Plex. You don't have to do that, but this is what I'm going to do on this occasion. You don't have to enable a recycle bin, and I'm not, but you may wish to in case of accidental deletion. Clicking Next will ask you if you want to encrypt this folder, and this will allow you to protect the data inside here from being stolen and the encryption removed. I'm not going to enable encryption here, but you may wish to based on the criticality of that data and the safety of it. Clicking Next from here will ask you to enable any of the background integrity checks on the disks over a period of time in that shared folder and that data therein, and you can even enable a limitation of the amount of storage taken by it. I'm not going to enable these, but you may wish to in your circumstances. And there you go. This shared folder is now starting to be completed. As a side note, when it pops up here, you will have permissions appearing here. Now, these are accounts you may have created. Later on, Plex will appear here when you add Plex. Be sure to come back to the edited share folder and user section, but don't worry, I'll show you that later. For now, make sure that your admin account has access to that folder. Click OK. As you can see, the Plex shared folder is now visible and available to see. Say, for example, in this folder, we start creating subfolders. Now, these subfolders we're going to call Movies. We're going to call the next one Photos, and finally a folder called Music. In fact, based on your own needs, we'll also create a folder called TV Shows. Now, the system will already create subfolders based on the applications you choose, but the difference between Plex and most other applications is that Plex will allow you to choose the folders that your data is in. A lot of proprietary applications from Synology will force you to use their folders. So as you install Photo Station, Video Station, Music Station, Moments and more, they will create their own folders, and the system will often ask you to select those folders for your data. Plex doesn't have that limitation, so go ahead and make sure that you put stuff in the right folders for you. On a side note, it's worth highlighting, heading back to Synology Assistant, that if you want to just drag and drop data into this folder, you can create a mapped network drive on your local PC or Mac system. If you look here, we can see my local PC setup here, but I can access my home drive, but on the side here, I can see little more than that. If on Synology Assistant, I right click here, I can get an option to map a network drive, and this will add the folder that we've just created on our local PC system. Let's log in with the detailed credentials we've created earlier and have a look. It will then list the shared folder we created, Plex. We can then click Next, assign it a letter, which in my case I'm going to use the letter S, click Next, and now if we go into the PC option, Plex, that folder on our NAS has appeared on our local PC system. We can double click and start drag and dropping files in here. Alternatively, we can drag and drop files into the desktop of our Synology NAS if we choose, but we don't have to do it that way. So, moving forward. Now we've created the folders for Plex and we're starting to create our storage system, the next thing we need to do is install Plex. The first thing you need to do is head to the package center here. When you go into it for the first time, it will ask you to sign the terms of service from Synology. Once you do that, you will have access to the available lists of applications that you can download. There's even beta apps too that you may wish to check out. But scrolling down or using the search bar, you can go all the way to the bottom and find Plex Media Server. Now we are going to install the app this time, but we don't have to do it this way, because you can either install here or you can manually install the application that we downloaded earlier to our PC. So, for example, if you wish to install manually, you can click Browse, find it in your Downloads folder, and there is Plex Media Server version 1.19.3. Now, it's worth highlighting that I'm not going to do it this way because I want to show you guys the difference between the stock app and the newest version. You see, this version we're going to be downloading is version 1.18. So the version we were going to download, the newest one, is 1.19. So there's lots of differences. But for now, just click Install. This will install Plex Media Server on our NAS. It will do that in the background, and based on your internet connection, it won't take too long. It downloads a small file, which will then be extracted and installed by the Synology NAS system. Bear in mind once again that while we're doing this, our RAID on that storage pool is still not complete, so we may see slight dips in performance. Had we just waited for the RAID to be completed, we will see much faster installation of Plex, as well as the accessing of Plex. As the Plex Media Server tool installs here, it is also worth highlighting that you may need to create a Plex Media Server account. You can create a Plex Media Server account real easy. I say Plex Media Server, I'm really just saying Plex. The options are pretty straightforward. You can either sign up for a brand new account, which is free, and then upgrade to a Plex Pass account if you so choose. With that, you can enable hardware transcoding as well as have access to digital video tuners for watching live TV. There's a bunch of other things, but you don't have to do it that way. You can just go ahead with a free account and connect that with your NAS. It's that straightforward, and you don't have to pay a dime. But carrying on here, we can see that Plex hasn't quite finished downloading there in the background. Once it's done, however, as you can see, it's started installing, so we've downloaded the full package. Once it's completed and it's now starting the app, this will change, and then we can either run Plex from here, or alternatively, we can head up to the top and find the Plex Media Server app here. So, on this same system, click Go Ahead on this option. It will open a brand new window, and as you can see up here, it switches from your local IP to the Plex website. And from here, you need to sign in with your Plex account. Now, whether you've created an account before and you enter with your email here, or sign up with a brand new account, you can connect with all of these means. So for now, I'm going to connect with my email, and I'm going to use my existing Plex account. Once you're signing in with your Plex account, either as a new or existing Plex user, this is the screen you'll see. It alerts you to exactly how Plex is going to work, how it connects, and what kinds of media you can use. Once you've read through this, and I'll be honest, there's not a lot of information to play with, take a good look up there at your IP. This means you're connecting locally. Rather than HTTP, www. whatever, right now you are interacting with the NAS, as you see. Click Got It, and from here it'll ask you to name your Plex server. It will take the default name of the server, but you can change it if you so choose. This is where you'll also allow connection remotely via your mobile phone, Amazon Fire Stick, or anywhere outside of your local network or your home internet. For now, I'm going to click Next. And now it's going to begin registration between that account and your NAS. Next, we need to organize the media. In other words, where your files are going to live. So for example, say we're going to select films. This is going to be an important point, because if we select films, then we select add folders, we then browse the folders on the NAS, find the volume we created earlier, and then find the folder we created, Plex. Now, as you can see straight away, here are the folders we created earlier. TV shows, music, photos, movies, and more. So for now, I'm going to select movies and then click add. Now, any movies we add to this folder will be indexed by Plex. Down here, we've got lots of information there in the background, and we're going to take a little look into multimedia files here. Never put things into the chief directory, only into the subdirectories. Now moving forward, we can select another folder. So if we go back, we can select another type, this time select TV programs. From there, we can select the TV programs folder in Plex, TV shows, click Add. As we can see, we've started creating more. You can create lots of different folders and each time click Add to Library. You can even change the metadata scraping, which is where they get the trailers, the thumbnails and more, all here in the background. And you can add multiple folders if you so choose. Once you've added all the photos for music, TV shows, movies and more to their respective directories on the Synology NAS, click Add Library. And as we can see, we've only created that one, but we can create more quite easily. So again, we're going to create 3 here, but because we haven't got any data in these folders, it's worth highlighting that these will be empty for now. So we're going to select music. We're going to create a music folder. And then click Add to Library. We've got different files and folders there. So we've accidentally created 2 for music. We'll create 1 for TV shows as well. Scroll there, go to Plex, go to TV shows, click Add, and boom, we're creating different files and folders there. Now, as mentioned earlier, if you go back into the Synology NAS, head up to here. From here, go make your way into the control panel. In the control panel, click Users. And as you'll see, there's a new account that's been created called Plex. Make sure to click Edit and go to Permissions, and make sure Plex has access to the files and folders. You can go for read-only, so nothing can be deleted on Plex, but read-write allows you to have more control. It's really up to you. Next, for applications, make sure that it has access to all of the different apps that it's going to need. It doesn't need access to most of these, but it definitely needs access to FileStation. From there, you can then come back and go back into Plex. Then click Next. Now it'll ask you if you want to install some of the third-party Plex apps. That's really up to you, but for me, I'm going to skip this step. Now it's going to ask you if you have multiple NASs like I have connected to your Plex account, which one's your primary source, and you can change the order of these, but still have access to multiple NASs that you own or your friends for data. I'm going to click this one and then click Continue. It will then ask if you want to have customized navigation of third-party supported services from Plex to be browsable and viewable from your Plex server account, or you can just disable them all if you choose. But for now, I'm going to leave them on and click Finish Setup. And that's really it. We've set up our Plex Media Server account. We've got these online streaming platforms here in the background. And if we make our way to Options, we can click More and find the folders we created. As you add data to all of these different folders, it will appear here with the metadata scraping in the background. There are a few extra things you can bear in mind, such as making your way into the NAS and examining some of the background options, such as changing some of the libraries and rescanning the metadata if you so choose, as well as a bunch of other options with regard to how video is played back. For example, when you're playing back files, you may want to take advantage of transcoding. Transcoding is the ability for a file to be changed in size, shape, format, and more to be more acceptable to the connected device. You will need to have a Plex Pass account, which is a paid-for subscription account, in order to take advantage of the transcoding engine on your NAS, but if you do, you have lots of options. If you are going to be using very dense files and you've got a powerful enough NAS, I recommend going for the hardest option there, and that will make sure that it takes advantage of the full transcoding assets open to the NAS itself. But there are lots of other options too. Just bear in mind, if you're not using an Intel-powered NAS or even a particularly powerful Intel NAS, then chances are there's no point using these options, because in many regards, the transcoding engine is not available on Realtek ARM-based processors in a meaningful way to Plex. Otherwise, this has been how to set up your Plex Media Server NAS. If you want to find this device on devices in your local area network or via the internet anywhere in the world, all you need to use now is the login details that you created with your Plex account. This NAS is now permanently linked to your account, and therefore anytime you log in with that account, Plex can access the NAS. Just bear in mind a few things. If you power down the NAS in the background from time to time, if you haven't set the right IP address, it may move around on the network. So as an extra step, I recommend going into the control panel, selecting network, going to network interface, highlighting the connected network interface you've used, and disabling one option. You want to use a manual configuration. The reason being that every time you power up or power down the NAS, because you may have different devices in your home network, its place on the network or the house that it's on the street that is your network may change. And if these change, sometimes Plex will have difficulty finding your NAS. So I strongly recommend that you select a manual configuration when setting up your NAS for the first time for Plex, and then click OK. And this will affix your NAS to this address permanently, and Plex will always be able to find it. But just remember that if you move this NAS to another network or someone else's house, this network address may be incorrect, as it may differ from their own network. If you need to reset the NAS, there is a reset pin on the back of the NAS that lets you reset the network connection. Alternatively, head back into a Synology Assistant and then click Connect, as it will find the NAS on the network even if it can't identify the IP, and it will allow you to change that network remotely. But this has been how to set up your Synology NAS, the DS420 in this case, as a Plex media server. I hope you guys have found this video helpful. Do let me know if there's anything more you want to see on NAS devices like this, and I will be doing full Plex testing on the DS420 very soon. Otherwise, click like if you've enjoyed this video, click subscribe to learn more, and I'll see you next time.